Evolution usually favors the agile. But 250 million years ago, nature decided the third dimension was optional. Beneath the stagnant, suffocating currents of a Triassic river, the mud itself breathes. It splits open. A perimeter of needle teeth emerges from a chassis thinner than a textbook. This is not a fossil of a crushed animal. It was engineered this way on purpose. You assume evolution is a constant march forward. You view biological history as an ascending staircase. A system climbing blindly toward higher intelligence, greater speed, and increasingly complex forms. You believe the universe rewards those who adapt, those who move, and those who conquer new territories. You are looking at a creature that completely shatters that assumption. Gerothorax. An amphibian that achieved a niche design so mathematically flawless, it entirely refused to evolve. For 30 million years, it maintained absolute biological stasis. 30 million years. Continents drifted apart and smashed back together. Entire lineages of massive reptiles rose to absolute dominance and collapsed into dust. The atmospheric composition of the planet radically fluctuated. And through it all, this creature enacted zero significant changes to its body plan. It remained identical across hundreds of thousands of generations. A living glitch in the evolutionary timeline. But the architecture of this survival houses a profound, structural paradox. Its cranium contains a fatal geometric flaw. The eyes sit completely flat on the absolute top of the skull. They are locked into the bone, pointing eternally upward. When it strikes, the jaw mechanism forces the entire upper head to hinge violently backward. The exact millisecond it opens its mouth to attack, its eyes are physically forced to look at the sky behind it. It goes entirely blind at the moment of the kill. A predator that hunts with a cranial structure operating like a crude toilet lid. Stationary. Armored. Mathematically flat. To understand how a blind strike secured a 30 million year dynasty, you must stop looking at this creature as an animal. You must look at it as a piece of hydraulic machinery. A system of living levers and valves. A machine that hid its greatest weapon deep beneath the dermis. It measures exactly 1 meter in total length. Yet its height is barely a fraction of its extreme width. It operates as a two-dimensional shadow existing completely within a three-dimensional world. The outer layer of the creature is not just permeable membrane. It is ossified armor, a subdermal chainmail composed of heavily calcified, interlocking plates forming a flexible bulletproof vest. A biological tank tread designed to absorb the crushing downward force of vertical predators. This armor wraps around the dorsal surface, creating an impenetrable shield against the teeth of aquatic hunters. Beneath this dermal armor, it deploys a physiological bunker strategy. Standard amphibians expose their fragile, external gills to the current. They wave them in the water column to extract oxygen. This exposes delicate respiratory tissue to parasitism. It invites catastrophic injury from passing threats. Gerothorax internalized them. It sealed its respiratory organs deep beneath the protective chainmail chassis. It pulled the fragile machinery of life inward, locking it behind a wall of bone. It became an amphibious tank, operating with total internal self-sufficiency. The armor is impenetrable. But its defensive plating is not what makes it a planetary anomaly. Its absolute dominance hinges entirely on its perceptual reality. It's Umwelt. It possesses periscope vision, fixed strictly on the z-axis. It stares upward into the aquatic void. It is entirely blind to the world directly in front of it. Blind to the predators creeping in the mud behind it. Blind to the earth resting below it. It does not need to see them. It completely ignores the horizontal world. It relies instead on seismic sensing, a biological radar grid calibrated to the low-frequency displacement of water. The chaotic noise of the river current fades into the background, the visual world dissolving into an impenetrable fog of heavy suspended silt where there is only the dark, the freezing temperature of the water leaching the heat from porous flesh, and the crushing, claustrophobic weight of the water column pressing against the scales in an absolute, suffocating silence. Then, a microscopic ripple fractures the stillness. 10 Hz. 20 Hz. The low, thumping acoustic rhythm of a lungfish swimming 3 feet above the mud. The vibration strikes the amphibian's lateral lines. The lateral lines, an array of subterranean seismographs mapping invisible kinetic energy across a fluid medium. The sensory nodes map the target in the pitch black. They route the kinetic data through the ganglia. Ganglia, a biological motherboard processing the geometry of the kill zone without requiring conscious thought. They calculate the exact mass of the displacement. They track the exact trajectory of the shadow passing overhead. They predict the exact millisecond the prey crosses the vertical strike zone. The mechanism fires. Beneath the surface of the skin, the skeletal architecture reveals a biomechanical impossibility. A reverse-hinged hydraulic lid. In nearly every terrestrial and aquatic vertebrate on Earth, the upper skull remains relatively stationary. The lower jaw drops toward the earth to open the mouth. Gerothorax reverses this fundamental law of vertebrate mechanics. It pins its lower jaw immovable against the riverbed. It uses the earth itself as a stabilizing anvil. The entire upper cranium hinges upward 50 degrees. We observe this through a side-view cutaway X-ray. Ghostly white bone interlocking with mechanical precision. Translucent cartilage glowing faintly in the deep shadow. The deep crimson of the throat cavity suddenly exposed to the dark water. A heavy-duty industrial trapdoor swinging open against the immense, crushing resistance of the aquatic pressure. This upward trajectory is the exact moment the creature goes blind. The eyes face completely backward. The target is lost from visual tracking. The predator cannot see what it is about to kill. But optical sight is utterly irrelevant when your mouth operates as a weapon of atmospheric physics. It utilizes suction feeding, a biological black hole designed to manipulate water density. As the cranial lid rips open, the internal throat cavity expands violently. It is driven by heavy, torque-generating musculature that snaps the bone backward. It creates a sudden, massive drop in internal hydrostatic pressure. A negative pressure void plunging to negative 80 kilopascals in a fraction of a second. A collapsing turbine pulling all available matter into a sealed vacuum chamber. The water does not just flow into the open mouth. It implodes. The surrounding fluid, the suspended river debris, and the targeted prey are violently sucked into the cavernous throat. It does not bite the fish. It consumes the physical space the fish occupies. A vacuum so astronomically powerful it tears the target out of the water column. It drags the struggling organism downward. It slams the prey against the internal rows of needle teeth before the brain can register the change in current. Faster than a mechanical camera shutter. More precise than a laser-guided munition. This is how a blind predator achieves a flawless kill rate. By generating a localized singularity within the mud. But to fully grasp the heavy consequence of this biological design, you must understand the crucible that forged it. The hostile architecture of the environment that demanded a flat, sightless killer. The Triassic silt is not a habitat. It is a suffocating, high-pressure quarantine. 251 million years ago, the Earth bled out. The Great Permian extinction annihilated 96% of all marine species. The oceans turned to acid. The atmosphere choked on toxic ash. The global temperature spiked to lethal extremes. Out of this planetary graveyard, the plagiosaurid lineage crawled into the volatile river systems. They faced a world of low visibility and crushing stillness. An environment where verticality was an absolute death sentence. Where casting a shadow meant being consumed by apex predators patrolling the upper water column. To survive, they had to disappear. Their ancestors, like Plagiosuchus, experimented with flattening their bodies. They tried to press themselves into the earth. A failed relative, Megalothoma, attempted the pancake geometry. But it lacked the perfect hydraulic efficiency required to survive the waiting game. Its chassis was flawed. Its mechanisms were inefficient. Gerothorax was the final, perfected version. The apex of two-dimensional warfare. Imagine the physical sensation of this existence. The visceral claustrophobia of being permanently compressed. trapped eternally between the heavy, coarse sediment and the dark water column above. A continuous reality of high pressure hiding. There is no sunlight filtering through the dense silt. There is only eternal, suffocating shadow. The water temperature fluctuating aggressively against porous flesh. The constant, crushing weight pressing down on the ossified armor. No movement. No pursuit. No exploration. Just waiting in the crushing dark for days. 4 weeks. 4 months. It achieved absolute mastery over this nightmare. No predator of its era could pry it from the mud. Its suction was too strong, anchoring it to the earth. No aquatic hunter could pierce its dermal chainmail. It survived the post-Permian chaos. It outlived every creature that tried to hunt it. It took the planet literally tearing itself apart to end its reign. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province eruptions. The Earth itself turned to lava. The geological rupture boiled the rivers and fractured the supercontinent into pieces. Only the fires of a global cataclysm could wipe the slate clean. But before the ash fell, this amphibian held its ground. It survived 150 times longer than the entirety of human civilization. Not by expanding its territory. Not by developing larger brains. Not by evolving faster limbs. It conquered deep time by refusing to move. Humanity views stillness as failure. You have built your entire reality on the frantic worship of momentum. You believe survival requires endless growth. Relentless hustle. Constant adaptation. If a species does not change, you assume it is primitive. If an organism remains flat in the mud, you view it as an evolutionary dead end. A failure of ambition. Gerothorax exposes the profound arrogance of this assumption. It proves that evolution is not a desperate race toward complexity. It is a search for mathematical equilibrium. Once you achieve absolute, flawless integration with your environment, change is no longer an advantage. Change becomes a fatal weakness. It did not need to conquer the world. It had utterly conquered its specific square meter of silt. It valued the terrifying, perfect stillness of a submerged landmine. Consider its jaw again. The reverse-hinged cranium. The blind strike. At first glance, it is a grotesque joke. A hunting mechanism operating like a crude toilet lid. But look closer at the geometry of its existence. That lid was not a biological punchline. It was a metaphor for the closing lid of an evolutionary era. A mechanism of absolute, mechanical finality. When that cranium snapped shut, it sealed the fate of its prey. Just as the creature's anatomy sealed the fate of its lineage. There was nothing left to improve. No more biological variables to test. The design was finished. The biological code was locked. It closed the lid on its own evolution. It sat perfectly still as 30 million years washed over its armored back. It worked flawlessly until the very earth beneath it turned to fire. We spread frantically across the globe. We tear up the earth to build our monuments. We desperately innovate to outrun our own extinction. We view our frantic, ceaseless movement as proof of our ultimate superiority. But look at the fossil record. Look at the 30 million years of unbroken silence in the Triassic mud. In a world obsessed with growth, hustle, and endless progress, is the ultimate form of success actually finding the one thing you do perfectly and then never changing again?